cool. High school graduation. It's time for rapping time. I'm about to be a full-blown rapper before social media. I'm like, let's get it. He's like, no. That's when I knew I was obsessed with sounds. That's when I knew. It's a rap. I'm going to be a producer. Because I'm looking at him like, ooh, you saying the inside voices out loud. I usually keep that in my brain. My pops wasn't having it with the music. My pops was like, yo, you either got to get a job or you got to go to college. Because at this time, I'm like, cool. High school graduation. It's time for rapping time. I'm about to be a full-blown rapper before social media. I'm like, let's get it. He's like, no. You need to figure out how to generate income. And not just that, but you need to be in somebody's college. Either or. I need you to figure out one of those. Because I was at a crossroads. I was like, what does college have for me? Mind you, this is 03. This is college dropout time. What a great timing for that.
Kanye, bro.
Kanye had me over here rethinking like, yeah, I'm not going to give my money to the man. That was terrible timing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I heard a Rap City interview where he was like, I'm not telling you not to go to college. I'm telling you to get everything that you can out of it and don't let them take advantage of you and put you in debt for a career that you don't want to have. When I understood that, it made me look different. But at the same time, I was like, I'm not trying to go to college. I'd rather find a job. Ironically, my pops was like, you got to figure this out ASAP. I was like, I'm going to my mama's house.
Mom's was gonna ask.
Yep, mom's was living in Carson at the time, ironically. She's living in Carson. And I said, Mama, can I come stay with you? I just graduated. I'm going to find a job, I promise. I just, Pops was giving me all kind of pressure. I'm just trying to figure this out. You understand the music. My mom is the one that bought me my first sound card, my first sound interface. She's the first one that bought me my first omnidirectional microphone. If anybody got it, she would. Mom's had me come over. I went over and I started visiting her because I was starting to drive now. So my pops gave me a car and I just left. I said, Pops, man, it was a hard conversation, but I told my mom, so I was like, Mom, I promise I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna do all these things, but I really want to do this music, and I just don't have a space to do it. And she was living with my grandparents at the time. It was their house in Carson, and I moved all my stuff over there. And with me moving back to Carson, all those Carson friends I can now get back a hold of. One of those was John. Over the years, John had learned to play the piano, classically trained. So we were already kicking it because it was like, that's my boy and I haven't seen you. And he was like, you doing music? And I was like, yeah. He was like, all right, cool. Well, we should do something together. First thing we ever made, I was still on MTV Generator. First thing we ever, actually, I went from MTV Generator to the Roland Phantom. My mom bought a Roland Phantom because one thing about my mom, she's been playing the piano for 30 plus years. She's always been in the church. She's always
gospel music,
right? So she's always had like musical instruments around. Even my grandparents.
She even said it. The Scarface, she liked it for the piano.
She liked it for the piano, supposedly. I know she liked that Scarface lyrics. I know she did. She liked the hip hop. But at that stage, like music was so much a part of her life. She's played at I don't know how many churches in LA and been the choir director or just led the music. So with that said, I go over there and my grandparents have a back patio. It was mostly used for storage. I looked at that and said, this is going to be my new safe haven to make music. It was thinnest walls you can think of. When it was 80 degrees outside, it was 84 inside.
That equipment.
When it was 40 degrees outside in Carson, the very rare times, I could see the smoke from my breath go out. But I stayed out there. I bought a floor heater one time. But eventually, I ended up getting a job at Quiznos, and John was the one that got me the job at Quiznos. So God bless John. I got a job at Quiznos, and I was like, cool. I got one of it taken care of. Got the job. I'm going to have some money. Man, them first few checks.
Yeah, this is not.
I started going crazy. I was buying stuff. I didn't know what I was buying. I was going to Guitar Center and letting them lead the way. And that was a terrible decision. But I was buying stuff. I think I couldn't afford these speakers, so I bought my first speakers from Walmart. It's like the surround sound setup. Bought that, brought it to the house. I had this old Dell computer that I had been recording all the stuff with Keaton. And eventually, I had a setup, man. I had a microphone that I got from Radio Shack that was like, you know, a little operator microphone. And I had a setup. I had my mic stand. I had my computer. I had my PlayStation. I had a TV amongst a bunch of old TVs my grandparents had and a bunch of junk. But man, I had my space. And so much of my resourcefulness came to life in a way that I never thought. I couldn't afford, even with the Quiznos checks, I could barely kind of afford to do a few things, you know, maybe take an occasional date out. But one thing I could afford to do was take the sounds in the room. I couldn't buy sound effects CDs, but I could take the sounds in the room and make my own sound effects. So if I had a skit where I'm walking, I'd take a shoebox. And that's the kind of creativity that I was around.
Holy shit. Wait, so you're sitting there, you're sitting there like Disney style creating.
Not knowing that's a job.
That's a real career.
It's a weird career. Like someone like Foley. Like what? Foley? What are you talking? I didn't know that was a career. I was just looking in the room and I was like, this is what happens when you give someone young enough, but also old enough to execute. But someone young enough that's like, this is the same place I used to watch these Snicker Night shows. This is the same exact patio that I used to watch these. Now I get to have my own broadcast, my own show. I don't want a TV show, but the show for me is the music. The show for me is the creativity. When I would watch Clarissa Explain It All, when I would watch Doug, I'd watch Doug imagine, like he would have a thought and then the imagination would like, and it would go to that moment. It's like I got to do that in real time with music. So instead of me saying, damn, Bearshare doesn't have sound effects of like footsteps that doesn't sound corny. What if I just did it myself for a skit? What if instead of trying to find another voice actor to play the woman in a skit, what if I just pitched my voice up? Like that was the kind of playground that I had. And then when John got involved, oh my gosh, John was so amazing on the keys. It was the first time I felt like I was making music and not just pulling sounds together. I made a drum loop on my mom's Roland Phantom that I ended up bogarting. It was the same Roland Phantom that you got like the clip sounds on from the Neptunes or like the Drop It Like It's Hot with Snoop sounds. And I made this drum loop and he played these beautiful keys. And we made an instrumental called Faithful as a Metro. She's faithful as a Metro, right? It was the opposite of what that title is. The title is ratchet, but the music was so beautiful. And John played a solo at the end. The first time I made something and I listened to it for hours and hours and hours and after he left. And that's when I knew I was obsessed with sounds. That's when I knew. It's a wrap. I'm going to be a producer. And even you got to think my growth as a producer was moving so quick as opposed to my growth as a rapper. As a rapper, it still took me a long time to write verses. I was still very serious about that. Like that was my number one career, but the production was like, you have a natural talent for this. You have a natural talent for this. Everybody kept saying it, but I didn't see it. I was just like, this is the process everybody goes through. But man, I'm telling you, the more time I spent with it, I was like, it's coming really easy for me to grow at this. And then eventually I became the producer of the group. Then I became a producer. The group split up, me and Keaton. When I moved over to Carson, I just became a producer for a new group called Curtis King. So I told you the origin of my name, and that's true. That's the origin of my name. But initially, me and John were trying to think of a group name because we wanted to be like the Neptunes. So that was one of our biggest influences. And so he was like, all right, we both went to Curtis Middle School together. He went to King Drew Medical Center. Curtis King.
Yo.
So we did a bunch of music together. I got it tatted, and eventually that group broke up, and I was like, oh, I better make a new name for this because it's with me forever.
Right.
So then I was like, you know what? Conquering my insecurity still applies. I'm keeping a name. Yeah, man.
And yo, so one I think it's really cool is you're, and this is a journey. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't know this, right? Like when you're 18-year-old, 19-year-old.
No, you don't at all.
You don't know this
nothing,
process,
bro.
like, You still got another.
I wish I could slap the back of my head as a young kid. All these visions that I had.
You're
Oh
like-
man, I'm gonna get in the industry. I'm gonna be the next Kanye West. Do you know what that means in 2020 and 2021 and 3 and 2? You sure you want that, young Curtis?
Yeah, man.
I had no idea. I
Jeez,
just
what Kanye's going through right now.
man, and I've made content about it where it's like that's what people. The more that I like, eventually, of course, we get there. But as I started to do actual industry work, I kept hearing that, man, you're gonna be the West Coast Kanye. You're gonna be this. And the older I get now as a father and a husband, I'm like, that don't seem like the life, the trajectory of what I set on. That doesn't seem like the ideal life for me. Even the fame doesn't seem like the ideal life for me. I like that I live in a neighborhood now where I get to make music for a few hours, very loudly. Nobody asks any questions.
Get excited.
As long as my grass is cut and the homeowners association don't come after me, everybody's cool. They don't even care what I do. That's so much more peaceful than when I think of, seeing Kanye cuss out the paparazzi at 5 a.m. So young one didn't know any better, man. But I just thought that I was like, man, I want all of this. I want everything that comes with it. But time would reveal itself in some very interesting ways and opportunities that showed me what this is really about. And I figured it out very quickly. Yeah, you need to pivot and figure out something else.
I want to jump a few years.
Yeah.
When did you meet your spouse?
I met my wife about 6 years ago.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you were on this producer journey for a while.
Like at this point, you're talking about I had already gone on tour as a recording artist. I had already got my placements with Kendrick Lamar and Absol and Glasses Malone, Mac 10. I had really already established myself even in my YouTube space where people know me from that space. There's a few different eras of Curtis King when I met her, but I had just came out of a really long-term relationship where I proposed. It was something I proposed that paid dues. So in front of tens of thousands of people. It didn't end up working out. And I was starting life all over again at mid, like not say mid, but like early 30s. I was by myself for the first time in a long time. And I was in an apartment, a little tiny apartment in Redlands, trying to figure out what's life going to be now. Right. I was part of an independent label called Black Cloud with Noah James and Jinx and all my comrades. And I actually had stepped away from the group as well. So this was the first time that I was by myself. And a DJ, a homie of mine, DJ Disco. Disco was like, man, my friend, she thinks she's cute. I was like, man, I'm just focused on me, just trying to do what she looked like. And he showed me a picture, and I was like, oh, tell her I think she's beautiful as well. Make it happen. And
I like how that southern kind of, it just kind of sneaks right back in.
They call it the macho man voice, but I'm like, that's just the
Yo,
I was like, man, can we make something work?
the grits.
Look, man, it's like it makes it less uncomfortable to talk about these things because it's like
so good.
But she we had met before at Noah and Lisa used to throw this series, a show called The Common Ground at the Vibe.
Yeah,
and I used to frequent there all the time. I used to be a performer, host, all these things. And I had met her a few times there before, never had talked until I was actually single. And in less than a year, we went from dating to that's the mother of my child. And you're now going to be my wife. I'm going to propose to you. It wasn't supposed to. There were so many things that in my life I thought it wasn't going to happen. I thought I was going to spend the next few years of my life studying Gary Vee books, Tony Robbins books, and just getting myself ready for whatever stage of my life this was. But ironically, I started working on myself because I told you that quote earlier that I read in a book that said, all of your relationships that have gone sour, all of your quote unquote bad relationships, they all have one common denominator.
It is you.
It is you. It is you. And so when I had that revelation and I said, okay, cool, I'll work on myself. I'll really work on myself this time. There's nobody in this house, in this apartment but me. and an empty fridge with an avocado rolling around. Like I was on the couch. I didn't have no cable. I was waiting for the internet. I was like, bad reception, so I can't be on the phone. I really had to stay with my thoughts. And it was the greatest thing that could have happened, because I think that it prepared me. It softened my heart. It prepared me to be ready for my wife. And I met my wife, and she was like the first woman that I was with that didn't have a rock hard, strong surface to her. She was very sensitive. So I would say things and they would affect her in a way where I couldn't joke a certain way. Instead of me being like, well, I can't be myself around her, I was like, no, I like this. It's going to cause me to grow in areas that I need to grow. That might have been the reason why certain relationships went left, because of my own immaturity, because of my hot-headed manner sometimes. So with her, I talk about it in a song that I have called C'est la vie, that she softened me, man. She softened my heart and prepared me not only to be worthy of being a husband, but also a father. Because ironic thing about my son, he don't respond to the same things that I responded to with my father. Yelling? Nah. He'll look at me like, don't do that. Like, he just cry. Or he just won't react the same way. So I have to now develop different ways of parenting, different ways of even processing when I'm irritated or angry. Both of them. Greatest, I couldn't even describe the love that I have for them, but they're also my biggest challenge, because it requires me to, in order to step in those shoes and do what I'm supposed to do, I have to become a better man. That's a great deal.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
What is the difference between you mastering and perfecting your craft versus you mastering and perfecting yourself? Which one was harder?
That's a great question. That is an awesome question. So what was more challenging, perfecting my craft or perfecting myself? I am from the schooling that they're not disconnected.
Okay.
I think that even if I didn't know, while I was perfecting my craft, the idea of perfecting my craft had so much to do with a level of comfortability living within my skin. So perfecting my craft was less about the hours putting in. That's a part of it. The hours that I put in, the songs that the songs that I'm just adding to the collection. Very little to do with that. It had more so to do with dig deeper so that you can tell more unique stories. Dig deeper so that you can show yourself a level of skill you didn't even know that you had within you. Well, to dig deeper, you can't lie to yourself. To dig deeper, you got to ask some really hard questions. You know, I have to control my irritation when I see somebody jump into rap and it's just a joke to them. I've learned to deal with that. That's boomer energy for me. But I remember delivering verses that literally put me in tears, and I had to stop. But these are my therapy sessions. But also, when you give a young kid therapy sessions and they don't know that these are therapy sessions, you also peel off Band-Aids, and you don't have the proper tools to kind of nurture the trauma. You don't have the proper tools to really close the loop. And so there was a lot of wounds that I opened up. And then when I performed the songs, I kept opening them up and I never actually closed them until I decided, you know what, I need to go on a self journey. And this came in many forms. I say one of the most impactful events that I've ever gone to this day. Anybody who knows me knows that I am not the same Dewan, not the same Curtis, was the Power Within Tony Robbins event. I've been there 3 times now. It was the most I ever paid for a ticket to go to anything. $700, I think, for like general admission. And my trainer at my gym invited me because he knew that I was really into like the self-help stuff. He was like, man, you want to go to this event? And I was like, I think I do. I was like, but let me see what I can pull together from resources. Now, this is around the time I'm starting to sell beats finally. That was later on down the story, but I went. And something about the amount of information that he was giving that was making so much practical sense was so aligned with where I was at in my life, and I was ready for a change. I was fiending for a change. This was the quest that I was going on, but I didn't have the proper driver, right? Like, God is very much a part of my life and about my journey, but you know, I think that he allows at least some space for us to go through it and not think through it. So I believe he put me in a place where I've been to churches all my life. I've seen people catch the Holy Ghost. I've seen people who are the holiest of the holiest when they're in church and start cussing up a storm when they leave the church. I've seen people who have had their life changed by church. All that. It wasn't until I went to that Tony Robbins event that I understood this is why people clap. This is the feeling that you get when you feel like you're inside a community of people who are all wanting to do better with life. It does something to you that's like you get so much energy inside of you. I'm not going to call it the Holy Ghost, but there's so much energy inside of me that I was like,
You gotta let it out.
it starts to make a lot of sense. Okay. The clapping, I used to be so self-conscious about clapping in church and, you know, making sure that I didn't clap the wrong way because I was very insecure. But when I got in that environment, I was like, I'm around 10,000 people that all want better. Or at least it feels like that. We got workbooks. It's forcing me to talk to people, my strangers on my left and my right. I have to talk to them. Where else have I seen that? Church. Look to your neighbor on your left and then say, how you doing? How you doing? I'm doing that now as an adult, and I'm doing it on my own, you know, by my own decision making. But being in that environment, man, I got into such a zone mentally that I was eating very minimal food for 7 to 8 hour days, just taking lemon water. And this information was so good, man. It got me in a prime state to where I walked on coals, hot coals, fire coals. Didn't think twice about it. I took all that energy for those 3 days, came back home. In a relationship I was in, I was ready to go. There was nothing stopping me. A week later, I released a project called Jubilee Year. It went number 1 on the hip hop iTunes charts. It was the first time, not number 1, number 3 on the hip hop iTunes charts. I shared it out there on Twitter, and Tony Robbins retweeted it. It's one of the greatest times of my life at that point, right? So that was a real turning point for me because he made the connections you're making right now. He didn't have to talk to me to help me make the connections that I made. He would ask questions like, which parent did you strive to get more affection from? Because that's going to shape so much of your decision making in terms of who you choose as a partner, your confidence, all these different things that is linked to. And he sat up there, man, and told so many different things. It's also the reason I went vegan. After that event, I went vegetarian for 10 years. I broke it this year. Shout out to Wingstop. And I went back. I'm going back. I'm back now. But that event, man, was the timing was so on point, and it made so much of the things that I thought made me out of place, things that made me feel like, am I wrong for having these thoughts that I have? I don't think people understand, like, I can only imagine for what it's like from my level of intelligence, but I have friends that are just pure geniuses. I don't know if people even acknowledge how lonely that can be. I know for whatever level that I have, it's lonely to have very specific thoughts and to see things in certain directions. Kanye makes so much sense to me sometimes, especially when he makes no sense at all, because I'm looking at him like, ooh, you saying the inside voices out loud. I usually keep that in my brain and let it formulate itself until it's ready for it's ready to be it's ready out the oven to be delivered. Right, that pizza's not ready. He'll go spit it out when it's dough. That's Kanye. But I'm recognizing, man, by going to that event, there were so many connections that I made that were like, now that you're giving yourself permission to step into your ultimate power, do something with it. And every decision that I've made, every hard decision, is the first time in my life that I leaned in to every hard decision that comes my way. Confrontation, hard conversation. I am the first one to lead. When we have a situation when the car breaks down, I'm the one that gets my ass out the car, and I'm going to walk to the gas station if it's 12 miles away. Instead of sitting in a car talking and being like, man, well, AAA kid, I don't really have AAA. I'm walking. Because by the time you decide it, I'm going to be there. I had a pastor one time prophesize to me. I came there trying to see about getting an opportunity, a job opportunity for my mom who was in a rough spot. And he said, we're going to talk about that, but I need to talk to you. He said, I see something in you. He said, you're a forerunner. No matter what the terrain, you're going to find a way to maneuver your way through it. And it was prophetic because that's what I gave myself permission to be after that Tony Robbins event. And I haven't stopped since.